Welcome to our first lesson where we'll learn about inner joins. And inner joins are mostly used across any relational database and are the most simple ones to explain. So, to comprehend how a join between tables work, let's proceed on our example. So, I have executed a query where I fetch data from my employees table and I'm fetching the employee ID, first name, last name, and the department ID. Every employee, or most of them, have a department ID assigned to them. However, that number does not tell me much in a human-friendly way in which department that employee is. So I'm going to pin this table and I'm going to check my departments table. As in the departments table, every department ID has also a department name. So we can see department 10 is administration, 20 is marketing, and so on. So when we check some of our employees, if we check our first, Stephen King, he has assigned a department with department ID 90. And if we check on the departments table the 90, that means he's executive, right? This is not a convenient way to check or fetch the data, so we have to join those tables. And we do that with the following query. So the syntax for the inner join is as following. In my select list, I'm going to specify any column I want to fetch, and I can fetch those columns from any of the tables that are joined in the from part of the query. So I'm fetching data from my employees table, and I'm joining to that table the department table. The syntax in the from is the table name, inner join, and the table we are joining, followed by on. So conditions, we are joining those two tables. And I'm joining those two tables by the department ID. So I want to fetch the data from the departments table, where the department ID from the departments table equals to the department ID on the employees table, right? So if we check also our ERD, we can see that the department table, the department ID is a primary key, and on the employees table, the department ID is foreign key. And this is a one-to-n connection. That means that a number of employees can have one department, but any department can be assigned to any number of employees, because multiple persons can work in one department, but one employee can be only in one department, right? So let's check back on our query with the join. As you may notice in my from part of a query, I'm using the names of the tables on my join conditions, but I could also use alias. So let's execute this query. And now, as we see, indeed, we are fetching the department name for every of the employees from the employees table, right? Very nice. Now my employee ID comes from the employees table, first name from the employees table, last name from the employees table, and the department name from the departments table. And those are joined on the condition where the department ID on the employees table matches the department's ID on the departments table. It is wise to use column tables or column aliases on both select list and the from part of a query as following. So as I said, I'm fetching the employee's ID from my employees table, same for the first name, and the same for the last name. And I'm fetching the department name from the departments table. This way, a query looks much cleaner, and we omit the chance to ambiguously name some column. So my query works now completely the same. Because if we do not define those, on particular cases, a database could be confused from which table to fetch the column data. So if I define the department ID, and as that department ID exists on both employees and departments table, the database will not know from which table to fetch that data. As we can see, we're gonna get an error. But if I specify the table name, we get the correct data. Of course, since this is an inner join, it is not important from which table I fetch my current department ID. I'm gonna get the completely same data, as this is the condition on which we join those tables. Rather than using the table names on the join and in the select list, I can also use the table aliases. So I can name my employees table just with the alias E and the department with a D. And I can change those aliases on the from part and on the select list, right? As following. So now I'm using the column aliases, and this query is gonna work in the same manner. A worthwhile is to mention that the inner keyword on the join syntax is optional. So if I remove the inner keyword, when I execute my query, it's gonna work in the same manner because the inner is, as said, optional, and join will default, if we write it as only join, to an inner join. Very nice. So to recap, the inner join returns only the rows where the data by the conditions we defined matches. So if we check our employees table, and we can see that there are 107 rows. But when we check our query with a join, we fetched only 106 rows. That means that on one row, the tables didn't match on the department ID. And that is because that some department ID on the employees table does not exist on the departments table. So if we check one of the rows, we can see it has a value of null, and null could not be matched by our condition on any row on the departments table. So we didn't fetch the data for a particular row in our query with the join, right? We can escape that with outer joins, but more on that topic in later lessons. See you over there.